spend the day scrolling through your phone, and eat some cereal straight from the box. I literally mean straight from the box. Just pour that milk directly into the box like an animal and eat it with a ladle. I was not expecting this. Okay, so remember when I made that video reading you to filth based on your favorite traumatizing childhood movies? Well, the comment section turned into a support group, like immediately, and a lot of you were like, "This is cute and all, but I can't believe you didn't even touch the ones that are actually traumatizing, you good-for-nothing Calm down, Cody, you didn't even watch it all the way through. It was 30 minutes long and you have the attention span of a literal spork." But you were right. I didn't. Apparently, The Brave Little Toaster, The Secret of Nim, The Page Master, Fievel, and f***ing Unico were not enough. You want me to talk about the movies that made you develop actual phobias and sleep with your bedroom door open until you were in college. So I talked to my creative manager and asked her what I should do, and she gave a very resounding "oblige him." So welcome back, or if you're new here, hi, I'm Tawny Platis, and today I'm covering 10 of the scariest, most nightmare-inducing, who approved this for children movies that permanently damaged you beyond repair, or at least rattled you real good for a few years. I'm talking about the films that made your parents go, "Oh, it's just a cartoon," but you were having a full psychological breakdown on the couch and were the only elementary-aged child at your school who regularly showed up with bags under their eyes from being too horrified to close their eyes every night. And I mean actual kids movies. I'm not talking about that one time when your teenage mother took you with her to the theater when you were 3 years old because she really wanted to see Interview with a Vampire. Was that just me? As a reminder, this is all in good fun. I'm still not a therapist, and if you've never seen my content before, this is meant to be comedy. It's not a real psychological evaluation. So, don't take any of this too seriously, but also maybe call your support person after this because we're about to open some doors that you've kept locked for a reason. So, let's get started. So, Return to Oz is the follow-up to The Wizard of Oz, and Dorothy survives that Kansas tornado only to get sent to a psychiatric hospital where they strap her to a table for electroshock therapy because apparently her insurance didn't cover "I saw some weird shit in a magical land" as a legitimate diagnosis. So Dorothy escapes all of this during a storm. She gets swept away to Oz again, and she finds the Yellow Brick Road has been destroyed and the Emerald City is in ruins. She also finds that everyone she's ever loved has been turned into stone, so she makes new friends with a chicken who actually possesses an incredible amount of common sense, a mechanical man with severe self-esteem issues, and a sentient couch creature with the head of a moose that looks to be suffering in eternal pain. There's also this 20-minute montage of screaming disembodied heads and these things called wheelers that a lot of you were weirdly attracted to. Okay, fine, wheelers that a lot of us were weirdly attracted to. Your parents really sat you down for a movie night and watched you white-knuckle your way through 90 minutes of psychiatric horror while they casually munched popcorn like you weren't actively developing new phobias in real time, didn't they? That was the moment when you first realized they either had no idea what they just subjected you to, or they genuinely, really, truly enjoyed watching you suffer, and now you have medical anxiety. This cinematic war crime permanently destroyed your ability to feel normal emotions, which is why you need increasingly deranged content just to register a pulse. And why you continue to watch increasingly unhinged content just to feel a flicker of emotion. This is the movie that recalibrated your entire nervous system before you even hit puberty. It's also why you've watched every single A24 horror movie. This movie is why you binge the most graphic, disturbing, true crime documentaries at 3 a.m., and still cannot replicate that specific flavor of childhood terror that came from watching a very small girl being chased by a headless princess. You are either desensitized to absolutely everything, or you have panic attacks when your doorbell rings. There is no in between for you. Now, the good news is you can handle basically anything life throws at you, because nothing will ever be as f***ed up as what you witnessed here at age 7. But the bad news is you're going to spend the rest of your life chasing that dragon just trying to find something that makes you feel as alive as when you saw Fairuza Balk getting electroshock therapy in a children's movie. Oh my god, I feel like you either rented this very specifically from Hollywood Video, not Blockbuster, Hollywood Video, or this was on a VHS tape you borrowed from the library. Oh, I can smell this movie. This movie has a very distinct 90s carpet smell. Okay, so The Witches is about a kid named Luke who goes on vacation with his cool, hard Norwegian grandma, and he discovers that successful women in positions of power are actually witches that look like the personification of gangrene. And they hold conferences about turning children into mice so they can more easily exterminate them because children smell awful. Yes, at one point, Angelica Houston peels off her entire face like she's removing the dankest sheet mask ever made, only to reveal a wart-clad, gnarled, gourd-headed demon creature designed by someone who hates sleep. Then there's a transformation scene where Luke watches his friend get turned into a mouse, and it's shot like a horror movie. This kid starts violently convulsing, green smoke pours out of his mouth, and his body contorts as fur sprouts out of his pores. And then he shrinks down to rodent size in exactly 25 seconds while the witches cheer. Then Luke gets discovered, captured, and force-fed a potion that turns him into a mouse, and the rest of the movie is told from the perspective of said traumatized mouse boy who's trying to stop this gaggle of witches from causing a child extinction event. And your parents just sat there watching you hyperventilate into a throw pillow while they casually said, "It's just pretend, sweetie." Like that was gonna undo the psychological damage of watching a child's body contort and shrink while he screamed for help. At one juncture in the evening, they realized this was about a mass child murder disguised as a fantasy film, and they still thought, yeah, we're gonna watch this all the way through. And now they have the audacity to wonder why you question every parenting decision they ever made. These days, you're the kind of person who's only comfortable when you're uncomfortable. Like, if you're not nervous, you're wondering what you're forgetting to be nervous about. You also actively seek out situations that spike your cortisol levels because nothing makes you feel more alive than flirting with danger, and you unironically think working in the ER sounds like fun. And honestly, that's probably because you have a very specific type of anxiety where you can handle actual emergencies like a stone cold killer, but you'll completely fall apart if you have to make a phone call. Oh, I'm gonna pop off about this one. I'm sure it has a plot, but all I got from this was that there is a thief who never speaks, and he steals golden balls from a wizard. A cobbler falls in love with a princess, and there's something about an evil army trying to conquer a city protected by those aforementioned 3 golden balls that sit on top of a tall thing. It's really more of a documentary about artistic obsession and the very fine line between genius and madness. So this unfinished psychedelic mind spent 30 years in production hell before being dumped into theaters like a film student's abandoned final, and the visual style is so aggressively hallucinogenic that watching it feels like your eyeballs are being assaulted by a very violent kaleidoscope. And the animation shifts between these truly breathtaking hand-drawn masterpieces and scenes that look like they were completed by someone's cousin who knows Photoshop. Which makes sense when you know the 30-year production history behind the film, which I do. But most of us did not have that context when we first saw this, and you know that. So I watched this as an adult, and it made me feel weird. But you watched this as a kid, and something fundamental shifted in your brain. Like, your neural pathways got rewired by sacred geometry and unfinished animation. Now you have to carry the weight of this ancient, half-finished film, like you've been cursed with forbidden information that nobody else has access to. Literally, nobody ever knows what you're talking about when you bring this movie up. And I'm not even going to try to get inside your head because whatever happened to you during that viewing experience exists in a dimension beyond my mortal understanding. So you're out here carrying trauma that can't be categorized, quantified, or explained, but it was worth it because it gave you impeccable taste. Like, this is why you're the person who knows where to get the best of everything and anything. You believe there are correct places to get pizza or frames for that niche artwork someone wants to hang, and you have introduced your friends to things they have never heard of and now cannot live without. You also have the kind of hobbies where you have to explain what they are before you can even info dump about them onto someone, and I feel like you're a thrift store person. Like, if you're not a millennial, you would have loved that hipster twee era, and if you are a millennial, you probably still have things with mustaches on them and at least one pair of stunner shades floating around somewhere in your home. Oh, I still have such a specific memory of seeing this for the first time at 4 years old and running away with my ears covered because it scared me so bad. So, Pee-wee's Big Adventure is about a fully grown man-child in a gray suit whose entire personality and self-worth are wrapped up into this custom-made bicycle. And it gets stolen, so, because he has an unhealthy obsession, he embarks on a cross-country quest to find it. Now, along the way, he encounters Large Marge, a friendly truck driver who very casually tells the story of the worst, most horrific accident she has ever seen before her face explodes into a claymation nightmare of bulging eyes and a screaming tentacle mouth. And it's what you look back at fondly as baby's first jump scare. This was also the first time that your soul left your body. And I understand that's not the full story, but it's also the only thing we all collectively remember besides the bar top tequila dance. Oh no, that's not true. There's also a clown dream sequence that feels like it was ripped straight from the deepest pits of hell. Oh no, these clowns had to have inspired Terrifier. They operate on Pee-wee's bike and then literally low it into the fiery pits with Satan, and you were sitting on your living room floor wondering how the f*** your parents were not only allowing this, but actively laughing at it like this was normal entertainment for a child. This movie traumatized an entire generation of kids who just wanted to watch a silly story about a quirky little guy looking for his bike, but instead got a horror show disguised as a road trip adventure. This is what caused you to develop an immediate and crippling fear of not only the dark, but flannel. You're also borderline paranoid about fortifying your home, and you can't maintain eye contact during uncomfortable conversations, and you never admit it, but sometimes you're still afraid of being home alone, and it's definitely for supernatural reasons, not logical ones, because logic left the building the day Large Marge's face melted in front of you. But E.G. Daily plays Dottie, and if you don't know who E.G. Daily is, she's the icon behind Tommy Pickles, Buttercup, and literally hundreds of other things, so go educate yourself. Oh, this is one of those movies that I thought I absolutely made up. I will always forget this is actually a movie until someone shows me evidence. So, a boy named Brian makes friends with a blue-skinned monster with horns who lives under his bed, named of all things, Maurice. And Brian travels through a portal to the underground monster world where creatures antagonize sleeping children for sport about 10 years before Monsters, Inc. came out. Maurice, who looks like a frat boy who got turned into a demon as punishment for his numerous crimes, takes Brian on a tour of his grimy, neon-lit playground prison dimension that's populated by creatures that look like what happens when you put every Baskin-Robbins ice cream flavor in a blender and then give them teeth, facial deformities, and very 90s coded bad guy attitudes. And there's just something deeply unsettling about watching a child willingly enter this realm like it's summer camp in the Catskills. Okay, no, I remember this. Maurice is being hunted by the head monster who looks like he's made out of expired lunch meat and the consequences of expired lunch meat, but I don't remember why. So this movie tries to sell itself as a heartwarming tale about friendship and facing your fears, but really it's about a child who gets coached by a literal monster into thinking that the creatures who torment him at night are actually just misunderstood and want to be his friend. All I'm saying is this is hands down why you have chronic insomnia, or at the very least what heavily contributed to it. You were also essentially taught that the solution to childhood fears wasn't to overcome them or process them, like a normal person, but to literally befriend them and accept them as part of your life. Like, oh, that thing that terrifies you and actively tries to harm you? You should make friends with it. And that's what shaped your entire approach to relationships, bestie. This is why you let your tyrant cat or tiny little dictator chihuahua run your life. You can't say no to monsters. Also, when your check engine light comes on, you always end up ignoring it longer than you know you should, and you own an obscene amount of black clothing. I don't think Who Framed Roger Rabbit was even meant to be a kids' movie. Everyone just assumed it was because of the cartoons, but it's a film noir murder mystery with an alcoholic detective as the protagonist, a femme fatale who was the awakening for 90% of people attracted to women, and the main plot points involve adultery and conspiracy. If you've never seen this, or if you blocked it from your memory, it's about a cartoon rabbit that gets framed for murder in a movie where iconic animated characters are dissolved alive in toxic liquid called dip as they scream in agony. And there's this scene where Judge Doom melts a little innocent cartoon shoe that's giving puppy energy in a vat of acid so he can demonstrate what happens to toons who break the law. And your parents were laughing at the funny voices and the slapstick and had no clue you were internally processing the fact that you just witnessed what is essentially an execution by chemical torture. Also, whoever designed Jessica Rabbit understood the assignment a little too well. They made her so absurdly proportioned and sultry that you still have a Pavlovian response anytime you see a gorgeous woman in a red dress. And I'm not saying that you can solely blame Who Framed Roger Rabbit for your love of hot cartoon baddies, or your appreciation for slapstick humor, or your weird fixation with the color green, or your deep-seated distrust of the legal system. But you can absolutely blame your parents for letting you watch it at age 6 and then acting surprised when you developed commitment issues and a thing for dangerous women. I feel like you were also one of those kids who was called jaded and cynical at a really early age, but nobody was concerned about it. They all just thought it was funny how precocious you were. I have thoughts about this one. All Dogs Go to Heaven, the movie that forces us to all remember that every dog will eventually die. So this is about a con artist, gambling addict dog named Charlie who gets murdered by his former business partner, actually makes it to heaven, but swindles his way out to go back to Earth so he can get revenge, which means he's walking around as a dead dog in a living body, knowing that when he dies again, he is going straight to hell with no appeals process. And we all know this because he has a Dario Argento-inspired nightmare where he's dragged to hell with demons and fire. So after he wakes up from that nightmare, Charlie then proceeds to emotionally manipulate an orphan child named Anne-Marie, who can talk to animals, and he uses her as a cash cow for his illegal gambling operation, while occasionally feeling bad about it. But not bad enough to stop. Then he dies again, but this time it was because he sacrificed himself to save Anne-Marie, so God decides, that's good enough, come on into heaven. So this was a Twilight Zone, M. Night Shyamalan crime drama for kids that had enough religious trauma to keep a generation of therapists employed for decades. It has everything. There's drinking, smoking, gambling, murder for hire, child exploitation, a villain who murders a dog by hitting him with his car. And we gave this a G rating because the 80s were lawless. And you were what, 6 years old trying to process the concept of mortality, redemption, and whether your family dog was going to end up in puppy hell? I'm gonna take a wild guess and say you feel a lot of guilt and shame on a daily basis that you maybe don't deserve, and you have this deeply ingrained belief that you need to constantly be earning your place in other people's lives or else you'll be abandoned. And I think we could probably spend several hours breaking down all your individual traumas, so I'm not gonna drag you today. I'm just gonna tell you to call out sick, spend the day scrolling through your phone, and eat some cereal straight from the box. I literally mean straight from the box. Just pour that milk directly into the box like an animal and eat it with a ladle. The ground is not going to open up and swallow you into the fiery pits of hell because you didn't fold your laundry or because you forgot to respond to a text. Also, anything where children or animals are even slightly unhappy or uncomfortable will just straight up make you cry, and boy howdy do nightmares hit differently for you. They don't just wake you up, they come in relentless waves while you roll around in bed during the wee hours of the morning fist-fighting some demons. And I do have to give you credit where credit is due. You throw a mean punch while fully unconscious. Oh look, a Don Bluth movie. Surely this will be a lighthearted movie the whole family will enjoy. I am physically incapable of sitting through The Land Before Time because there's a scene where an infant dinosaur literally curls up and... I'm thinking about it. Literally curls up inside his mother's footprint, his deceased mother's footprint. Literally curls up inside his deceased mother's footprint because it's the only trace of her that's left, and I just had to dissociate to even tell you that. It is devastatingly sad. I simply cannot handle it. This entire movie centers on a bunch of baby dinosaurs who've all lost their parents and have to trek through this prehistoric disaster zone filled with active volcanoes, earthquakes, and predators while following mysterious voices in their heads, which is an apt metaphor for growing up. Because either their primary caregivers get brutally taken out on screen, mind you, during the opening act, or they're separated in a catastrophic earthquake. And they're all coping and reacting in various ways, like Littlefoot is just fully and understandably in his grief. Sarah develops a superiority complex. Ducky's just not even processing her feelings. She's embracing toxic positivity. The pterodactyl is so anxious he can't even fly properly. And Spike barely knows what's going on because he's mere hours old. Look, I think most people struggle with abandonment issues on some level. But baby, yours are the deluxe edition. You got that premium top shelf shit. You're the kind of person who's checking in with your significant other, your mother, and your next door neighbor, Linda, every 5 minutes just to confirm they haven't spontaneously decided their life would be better if you were not in it. Like, you look at the red receipts on text the same way nurses look at their patients' vital signs. So I just need you to hear this. Nobody's leaving. Nobody's angry with you out of nowhere. And if they are, you deserve better anyway, bestie. But the whole being apart from your family freaks you out thing is actually pretty standard human behavior. So you're not alone in that, but that's not the point of the movie. The point is, always eat your leafy greens, and dinosaurs are awesome. Now, go get a salad, go visit a museum, unfuck yourself, just seize the day, babe. Look, I know. I said kids' movies, I'm aware. And I know you were going to say this was not made for children, but it was rated PG. Which means not only did someone make a calculated decision to adapt this Richard Adams novel into a cartoon and give it a very accessible rating, it also means that because so many of us saw this before we had left elementary school, that I am legally required to include Watership Down on this list. So I don't want to hear it. If you've had the pleasure of avoiding this horror show, it's about a psychic rabbit named Fiver who has apocalyptic nightmare visions about mass, blood-soaked bunny slaughter. So he convinces his brother and their crusty little group of rabbit friends to follow him on a mass exodus out of their home that's about to be destroyed by what we know are human developers. And they escape just in time while everyone they ever know dies as their entire home gets bulldozed and gassed. And after that, the whole movie is just them being chased by dogs, mauled by cats, getting caught in snares, and attacked by military rabbit officers. And the whole thing takes place across a very picturesque, pastoral English countryside, which is a wild juxtaposition. That's what I feel like really got all of us. The animation style makes it deceptively gentle and beautiful, like, oh, a watercolor painting come to life, and then gory rabbit on rabbit violence. That's what makes the violence so disturbing. Your brain cannot reconcile pretty pastoral countryside with rabbit getting their throat ripped out. It's also, at its core, a political drama. I'm not joking. Their bunny rabbit leader is a dictator named General Woundwort, who is an out-and-out fascist and tries to murder everyone who disagrees with him. But anyway, they finally establish their new warren at Watership, and everyone gets collective seasonal PTSD, and the whole thing ends with what I thought was this very heavy implication that the cycle of violence and survival we just witnessed is just gonna continue forever because that's nature, baby. You watched cute bunnies get eviscerated before you understood what eviscerated meant. And now you have this very specific and unfortunately relatable brand of anxiety where you're simultaneously deeply afraid of disaster and also always expecting it. There's a high probability that you have a stockpile of emergency supplies, including but not limited to prescription medication. You've researched survival skills you'll statistically never need, and you get visibly stressed when people you don't even know do not have a backup plan for literally anything and everything. But then again, it is 2025 in the year of our Lord Beelzebub, and with each passing week, you're probably feeling more and more justified and validated at your level of prepper, and honestly, you could have worse hobbies. You're also the type of person who wouldn't mind being concussed so you can just forget about this film altogether and move on with your life. What? I don't think there's anything else I can really say that you shouldn't just be bubbling in on a worksheet during a psychiatric evaluation. A lot of people asked me to cover this in the comments, which means I had to think about it, so now you all have to suffer with me. This is like The Land Before Time for me. I would not be able to watch this today. The Neverending Story is about a depressed kid named Bastian, who goes to hide in this bookstore to get away from his bullies, and he starts reading this book about a collapsing fantasy world called Fantasia. And it's being consumed by an entity called the Nothing, which is quite literally existential dread and the manifestation of people losing hope and imagination, obviously because this is a children's film. So we watch entire civilizations, landscapes, and characters get erased into a void of nothingness, but a young warrior named Atreyu is supposed to save everyone, including a moonchild empress goddess, and on his way to do this, he watches his horse slowly sink into the swamp of sadness and die because the horse literally gave up on living due to overwhelming depression. And Atreyu is screaming and crying and begging Atrax to fight it, but the horse just accepts death while Atreyu watches helplessly. And it's the reason I will never watch this shit again. This scene truly broke all of us. We all remember exactly where we were when we saw this movie featuring a child who watched his best friend commit passive suicide by sadness in a swamp. But don't worry, because in the scene after that, there's a giant wolf who exists purely to crush Atreyu's spirit by explaining that hope is meaningless and everything he loves will be destroyed anyway. The next time someone asks you why you've chosen nihilism, just show them this movie. The wolf literally tells a child the world is dying because people have stopped believing in hopes and dreams, and this 10-year-old has to process the weight of humanity's collective despair while being haunted by a nightmare wolf with glowing eyes and the ghost of his dead best friend horse. Now, eventually, Bastian discovers he's actually part of the story, and now he has to save Fantasia by believing in it and giving the childlike Moon Empress goddess a new name, which means the fate of an entire universe rests on one traumatized kid's ability to have hope despite everything. And he pulls it off, but like, barely. It has been decades since we got off this emotional roller coaster, but we are still all collectively experiencing the vertigo from a movie that was a clear metaphor for losing your inner child to the crushing weight of existence. You learned some hard lessons early in life, which you were told builds character, but all it really built were emotional walls. Now you're performing this delicate balancing act of cold vulnerability and intense empathy that confuses literally everyone who tries to get close to you, but you're pretty handy around the house, and you're a pretty good gamer in your opinion, so that's something. Also, make sure you're eating more than just carbs and sugar today. Get some protein and a vegetable or 5 in you. I am fully aware I did not cover every piece of psychological warfare that was marketed as children's entertainment in the 80s and 90s, and that there are so many more terrifying movies and shows than what I talked about today. So if I missed any of the specific ones that are still tormenting you, let me know in the comments. It doesn't have to just be movies either. Like maybe you want me to talk about that one specific episode from Are You Afraid of the Dark that's still giving you waking nightmares? Or how Courage the Cowardly Dog made you afraid of your own bathroom? Seriously, feel free to share any on-screen childhood trauma you're carrying around with the group here. And as always, if you enjoyed this video and want me to keep making them, like, subscribe, and share with your friends, and I'll see you next time. So this movie tries to sell itself as a heartwarming tale about